Hello, everybody. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. A update regarding the Clayton Echard v. Jane Doe v. Dave Neal v. Greg Gillespie court cases that are going on. The current only active court case is the lawsuit levied against me, an injunction against harassment, which has already been delayed once. But it looks like we've got up to 5 losses in a row for Jane Doe. I'm going to go over those right now. The last case she won was an order of protection against Clayton Echard in a case in which he wanted to share evidence that he wasn't the person leaking harassing images of her and that actually she had posted them on her own public Dropbox. The judge denied Clayton's attempt at sharing that evidence, and she won an order of protection against him in Arizona. Well, then, and again, I'm going to go over what I believe to be 5 that she has lost or is in the process of losing, certainly hasn't won. So we're going to get into those right now. Do me a solid. Follow me on Instagram at DNeals, patreon.com/Dave Neal for behind-the-scenes bonus content. I'll be going live right after this video to discuss this case even more, and also every morning and afternoon Bachelor Rush Hour, the hit podcast. That's right. Double duty. We are providing you content to work, home from work, walking the dog, breastfeeding your kid, whatever that, mowing the lawn, metaphorically, trimming the bush, whatever you're doing out there, we got content for you, pop culture, entertainment, and Bachelor news. So, Jane Doe lost an injunction against harassment against Clayton. We shared that very briefly. Of course, I blurted out. She actually tried to take me to court on this for sharing this information, which again, somebody else posted to YouTube, and we, of course, watched it commentary style, as we have been doing so with all of the aspects of this case. So she threatened to take me to court over this. As far as I know, the court has done nothing with it. I'm assuming they threw that out, or she just never filed any paperwork because it hasn't made its way to me. And trust me, when people file paperwork against me, it makes its way to me very quickly. So I'm not even including this as a loss. Heck, why not? Let's include this as a loss. So she loses her injunction against harassment to Clayton. Then she loses or has a case thrown out where technically both sides lost this intentional infliction of emotional distress. They were kind of suing each other. She wanted $40,000 in damages, claiming that some rashes and blotchy skin was the result of the torment she's had to deal with Greg Gillespie. Here's the judge dropping the case.
The court cites to various cases and says, well, typically in our cases, everyone suffers emotional distress.
You understand that case hurts your other case as well.
And again, Your Honor, at the end of the day, if the court were to dismiss in both cases, that would be a happy day for my client. It's been 2 years.
That's what I'm going to do, folks. There's not enough evidence of emotional harm from either side to survive summary judgment.
And of course, this was considered a win for Greg Gillespie's side, as he was just counter-suing her because she was trying to say she inflicted all this damage. And he's saying, no, I've been the one who's had to deal with her. Greg Gillespie's got a pregnant girlfriend who, they all live in the same town. This is absolutely wild. We're pregnant as well, but we live far away from them, which, again, does that provide me any level of protection? A little bit. If I had to know that I could run into someone at the grocery store, that would be a concern. I got to get my wife to go buy mangoes, and all of a sudden she has to make eye contact with somebody. It's just, I think Jane Doe has a hard time digesting that grown people are afraid of her. I think that's fair to say. I think Greg Gillespie's afraid of her. I think Clayton Echard is afraid of her. And to some extent, I am, because I don't have control over anything she may or may not do. And she says, well, I'm being accused of being this completely frivolous person who's off the chain and could do emotional harm or physical harm to somebody else. And the truth is, you just don't know. You don't know if she's got that within her. So everyone has to operate with an abundance of caution. So this was the second case in a row that was dropped or lost. And then we have, of course, her temporary restraining order again. And by the way, it's hard to prove an intentional infliction of emotional distress. What are the elements of intentional infliction of emotional distress? Again, this is in Maryland, but there's a graphic I pulled up. The distress, it has to be severe. extreme, outrageous. There's a causal connection between wrongful conduct and emotional distress. The conduct is intentional or reckless. So in my eyes, Greg Gillespie would have to do something that he would know would cause her real duress. And, defending himself in the court of law wouldn't be that. And of course, the judge threw that case out. So next we have a few more things here, right? The third thing she lost is the temporary restraining order against me. It was denied in court here in the Superior Court of California. Initially, so this is how it works, right? This is what the judge had to say. She filed all this paperwork saying that I was committing revenge porn and that I was harassing her and harassing her mother and all these other things. Here's what a judge had to say. The allegations in the petition are conclusory, not specific as to date, time, message, and potentially involve core First Amendment concerns. Restricting potentially protected speech without a hearing could constitute a prior restraint. A hearing will be necessary to ascertain if the communications are not protected, amount to harassment, cyberstalking, revenge porn, defamation, etc. I'm very willing to present all of my evidence in that hearing in the most confident way possible. So the court denied that. That is their third one. They denied the temporary restraining order against me from her. Again, still supposed to go to court. The initial court date was supposed to be yesterday. It's now December 18th. My guess is it will be delayed again because there are more, I don't know the proper legal terms, discoveries happening, unearthing of things, and there's some other things going on there that I'll get into at a later date and time. LDR, or LDT, I should say, later date and time. All right, so anyway, now we have the paperwork alleging Greg Grippo had committed some sort of crime. Whether or not I don't know exactly what she's alleging here, but I will tell you this. After this court case, the one that Greg Gillespie, did I say Greg Grippo? Excuse me, Greg Gillespie, a lot of alliterations here. And by the way, very, very hard to do. There's a lot going on here. And I got to be clear, I don't need any of this in the courtroom. At least, I'm trying not to misspeak. Greg Gillespie received a phone call from Scottsdale Police after this 2.5-year case ended. And what that will amount to is a police report that apparently has been filed, and I've got requests ordered for that report. I'd have to pay for them because I'm considered, whatever. I don't know. We'll have to see if anything comes of that. But that, I don't believe he's been charged with anything. So that's, frivolous in the sense that what has he done wrong? You know what I mean? My guess is that she's saying he's violating his restraining order because he showed up to court to defend Clayton Echard in his injunction against harassment, where Jane Doe was available only through cyber zooming, so she wasn't actually there. Again, that's the fourth thing here that has been a no-go. And then Clayton now has been accused of violating a restraining order. How do we know that Clayton... Oh, hold on. How do we know that Clayton has been accused of violating a restraining order? Well, because she told us, right? So after she gets a lawsuit going against me and loses her, temporary restraining order, and we see the court system actually working the way it's supposed to, which is a judge looks at the evidence and goes, okay, we got First Amendment concerns here. Let's see this play out. We're willing to do that, right? After that happens, Clayton wins his injunction against harassment against her. We know that, right? Which essentially means she has an order of protection against him. He's got an injunction against him and against her. They're not allowed to talk to each other. Boom, done. Well, after that happens, we find out that Jane Doe is actually accusing Clayton of more issues in court. Now, we find that out because she sends an email to podcasters saying, if you take Dave Neal's side and don't, agree with my perspective, my intent is to sue for defamation. And, well, I have to say this about Jane Doe. Her threats of lawsuits to other podcasters, for the most part, have worked. We've seen Nick Viall only discuss this story when he can get a guest to talk about it. He's completely, talk about a special forces move by him, just using his guests as, shields from any lawsuits. And then, of course, the only person that we've seen talk about this has been Reality Steve. But within that email, she says somewhere down here, where is it, that she's actually taking Clayton to court. She said, and again, after she lost an injunction against harassment, she said, second paragraph, I also have an order of protection against Clayton, which he has already violated. The detective on the case believes he has enough evidence that the DA will want to prosecute him and send it to him today. Now, that email was from several weeks ago, and we have not seen any information from that. But this is a heavy accusation she's making. What is this restraining order violation? If the defendant, in this case Clayton Echard, violates the terms of the protection order, a restraining order violation may be charged. If the civil court stipulates a no contact order between two people, which they have done, and one of them calls the other, there is already a violation. If any aspect of the order is violated, the complainant can file a lawsuit against the violator, since the restraining order is enforceable for 1 year. And I actually believe it's 2 years in this case, but I could be wrong. You may want to bear in mind that a restraining order will show up on your records, and can come up during background checks. This would be terrible. You're trying to do something big in your life, and a little background checks run on you, and they see a restraining order. I mean, will this hurt Clayton when it comes to moving into his next apartment? Simple things like that. Does he lose his Second Amendment right to bear arms? Most likely. Violation of an order for protection is a Class 1 misdemeanor in Arizona. However, the defendant will be immediately detained pending a final decision by the judge regarding the release. If what Jane Doe was saying was true, that a detective thought they were going to serve Clayton with violation of his order, she would have had Clayton Echard, former bachelor, guy who, as far as we know, received only a blowjob from her. She would have him handcuffed and arrested. Again, if that actually happened, if they deemed him in violation of the restraining order. Conviction of violating a protection order could include a maximum jail sentence of half a year in jail, a maximum fine of $2,500, and an 84% surcharge. I mean, the surcharges these days. Oh, and then they're going to slap him with a $5 processing fee on his check. Gotcha, bitch. Either way, wild stuff. So, according to the information we have, she's lost that a violation against a restraining order, because it was 2 weeks ago. We haven't heard any information. I'm guessing she would have let us know if that was moving forward. But of course, we're not talking to her. But just because I'm not talking to her doesn't mean she's stopped emailing me. And then we find out that she's trying to sue me in Arizona, and she was trying to get her injunction against harassment moved to Arizona. I don't know. Is it because she'd be able to do Zoom, calls better than in Los Angeles? I'm really not sure. She's been very quiet since Thanksgiving. I hope she had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Here's proof of my $10,000 lawyer retainer, which was sent to my lawyer. This is from my bank account, so you can clearly see it's been deposited. It's pending. It's out of my hands. The actual billing and invoicing and all those clerical things that come from it, I'll share with you guys in a redacted way, just so you know that it's not just a retainer that's getting sent to a lawyer and sent back to me. This isn't, some sort of Ozarks where we're laundering money. You know what I mean? You'll get all of the information, don't you worry. So we have raised over $10,000. I received, $9,700 of this. Of course, there's court fees and things like that. There's GoFundMe, takes a chunk and all this. But I want to just thank everyone for that. You're seeing where the money's going. My lawyer he's not entering this injunction against harassment that's placed against me in a lazy way. He's pursuing and we are pursuing all avenues just to prove that we are doing and are on the books doing the right thing here. And I'm very confident that is going to be a net positive for us over here in this community, and a trickle-down effect, good for Clayton, good for Greg Gillespie, and even for the guy Mike, who apparently was guy number one in this whole instance. Now, it's important that Jane Doe has told Greg Gillespie, Michael was a sealed case. Any talking about him is violating blah, 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 blah. She said the same thing to me about Greg Gillespie. She's got this Russian doll thing happening. Oh, you can't talk about that. It's a sealed case because of dot, 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 dot. Well, what have we learned? None of these fucking cases are sealed. They're all out there for public consumption, and we're going to do just that. We're going to continue to talk about all these things. But that's where it stands. Now, I went on a friend's podcast, who's a really close friend of mine, co-creator. We've done a lot of work together. He's family. And, a lot of people just don't know what's going on with this court case. So I talked to him for almost 90 minutes with all of the details. If there's anyone in your life that you need to have caught up on all this and can't watch countless hours of different content, this is it. This tells the whole story as far as we know so far. And some people had other opinions of what might be going down with why, Jane Doe might be quiet right now. And someone said, after watching the whole situation for months and watching you and Clayton fight back, as well as Greg Gillespie, I believe her family is quietly sitting this one out. I think they want her to hit rock bottom, so maybe she'll be held accountable by the court or they can force her into treatment. It seems they know they created this monster, but someone else has to take it down. My hope is that they aren't just sitting it out. My hope would be that a family would intervene to get to the truth so we could stop wasting so much money and donate it to actual charities and people in need and this and that. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know what's going to happen, but it will be interesting to find out just what's going on as far as how far the family may be involved. So a lot of people have brought up this very interesting idea of a vexatious litigant. In Arizona revised statute Title 12, Courts and Civil Proceedings, there is such thing as a vexatious litigant. In a non-criminal case, at the request of a party or on the court's own motion, the presiding judge of the Superior Court or a judge designated by the presiding judge of the Superior Court may designate a pro se litigant a vexatious litigant. A pro se litigant who is designated a vexatious litigant may not file a new pleading, motion, or other document without prior leave of the court. A pro se litigant is a vexatious litigant if the court finds the pro se litigant engaged in vexatious conduct. All right, for all of those that went to state school, define vexatious. Vexatious, causing or tending to cause annoyance, frustration, or worry, denoting an action or the bringer of an action that is brought without sufficient grounds for winning, purely to cause annoyance to the defendant. Kind of like if someone threatens to sue other podcasters for not agreeing with them. That, to me, along with what appears to be at least 6, right? I said 5. I initially said she lost 4. Now I'm saying there's 6. She lost her IAH to Clayton. She had her intentional infliction of emotional distress thrown out, lost her temporary restraining order against me, filed paperwork alleging Greg Grippo did something wrong. We haven't heard back from that. Clayton was accused of violating a restraining order, and she threatened to sue me in Arizona for discussing her court case and sharing the video. So 0 for 6. If she was a baseball player, we'd bench her. You got to sit this one out. 0 for 6. What are you, my New England Patriots? They're 2 for 9. Okay, she's actually has a worse winning percentage than the worst team in the NFL. Fire the attorneys. All right, folks. Either way, so here's when we're looking at the vexatious litigant. For the purpose of this section, vexatious conduct includes any of the following: repeated filing of court actions solely or primarily for the purpose of harassment, unreasonably expanding or delaying court proceedings, court actions brought or defended without substantial justification. What we saw in her order of protection against me, she provided no evidence whatsoever to have a judge grant the order of protection against me. Same thing for her, intentional infliction of emotional distress. She didn't provide enough evidence to show any reasonable patterns that existed. Engaging in abuse or discovery of conduct in discovery that has resulted in the imposition of sanctions against a pro se litigant. A pattern. And now here's where it gets interesting. A pattern of making unreasonable, repetitive, and excessive requests for information. Repeated filing of documents or requests for relief that have been the subject of previous rulings by the court in the same litigation without substantial justification has the same meeting prescribed. So, again, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know if she could be slapped as a vexatious litigant, but boy, wouldn't that be a cool punk band? Oh, did you see the new band out there at the Roxy? It's the Vexatious Litigants. Their bass player's really good. They got the eyeliner on. Either way, Looks like we're going to have to update the graphic to 6 losses in a row. I don't say this to poke the bear. I'm just going to continue to give our audience updates as we see them regarding these stories, these lawsuits, the patterns being used here, the terminology that's being used to silence those that are around. We saw her hand, and we are not folding. And it's all because of your support. Link in the comment section if you want to donate to the GoFundMe. No pressure whatsoever. I do expect my court fees to be more like $12,000 to $14,000. It looks like the more information that gets put into this, the higher the bill gets. But we are here in pursuit of the truth. I know you are as well, and we'll be back right after this.